Merchant Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, Dylan highlights a couple of our Enlist E3 soybeans in groups 2 and 3. Lynn recaps a presentation on weather and climate from the ICM Conference. And Ben shows weather patterns from Eric Snodgrass's Conduit Ag Weather platform. Welcome to Merchant Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have Lynn, General Sales Manager, Dylan, Agronomy Lead, and myself, and we are going to go ahead and get started with some soybean highlights.
Yeah, so I want to give a few quick highlights of some beans that are really spectacular, I guess. First, I'm going to start with the Cherokee. It's a 2.9, so it came out in 2024 in full swing, and the bean has never kind of looked back. It has a very broad fit. It can be on your productive ground or your a little bit tougher soil, and it's still going to perform really well. And in 2023, it yielded 104.7% of test mean, and this year it was very strong. It's around that 104, 105 range. And really, it's beating a lot of competitors, and then a lot of the new beans that are around it too. So we know we made a good pick in that 2.9 range, because it fits that broad acre. And then we can go a little bit later to the Jefferson, which is a 3.3. We've kind of talked about it before, but I don't think it gets enough credit. We know it's full commercial scale this year, and I think it can handle pretty much every acre as well. Maybe leave it towards that little bit more of a productive soil, but it's got that peaking tolerance that is really key. We keep talking about it every week, so I don't want to harp on it too much on the peaking side of things, but it stands really well. Even in our seed production last year is at 80,000, and it really stood strong. Sometimes branching can be a problem. It did really well for us this past year, and it did really well in plots.
Yeah. One of the couple things that I've learned, or I've talked to a couple of the sales managers about the Cherokees, to go back one, that it's got a very robust plant type. It covers 30-inch rows extremely well. It is a very, very solid contender for sudden death in all of the fields that we saw it in this past year. We didn't see a lick of sudden death in that product. One comment that I got from probably central Iowa, maybe west central northern Iowa, is that the standability was a little bit suspect on it, and that doesn't completely shock me because of how robust the plant type is. It does get some height to it, because it does handle the stressier acre. You want a plant that can get up and cover and shade the rows. So if you got really, really productive dirt and you're planting a little bit later, you may see it tangle up and mix up a little bit. So, pulling that population back a little bit to get a little bit bigger stem on it, that would be definitely something to think about. So yes, I agree with you. Those are both broad acre footprint products. I think we're going to be selling a lot of Jeffersons down into our bean on bean acres, whether that be into the northern portions, central portions of Missouri, and even clear down into southern Illinois, where the cyst issues are more prevalent because of the bean on bean acres. So
when we talk about that architecture, just I guess to go back a little bit, from what I've seen, that Cherokee kind of reminds me of a little bit of a Monroe characteristic, as far as like when we have people that talk about covering that row, maybe not necessarily a full bush style product, but it'll get an occasional branches, but really long petioles that give it some extension out over that row. And then you get into that Jefferson. When we see it on some productive dirt, obviously this year with seed production planted in at 80,000, it's going to branch really well. But back when we were working with a different company on how to do like identifying plant architecture and how stuff builds its yield, this one, the Jefferson, it seems like it carried some yield on its branching. So when you're talking about that productive acre, I think when we get into the Cherokee, Jefferson, and I'm going to lump the new Monroe kind of in that same boat. We do a lot of parallels as we get through our bean selection, that all of those are going to be one that I'm excited about. When we get it in the stress acre, it's going to have yield, but when it throws those extra branches, when it has good moisture, good fertility, we're going to see a top-end yield that we haven't seen. And typically products that kind of fit that, either the geographic footprint, the plant architecture, I think it's just all three of them are very widely adapted to what we have talked about. And I think that is because we're getting some extra goodies out of the plant architecture and building yield on some branching, but also being able to kind of come back and carry enough on the main stem that in that stress environment, we're not sacrificing yield by trying to source the sink on the outsides of that plant.
Yep, nope, those are two spectacular ones to highlight, as you had mentioned there. That's a good start to things. Lynn, what did you kind of wanted to cover?
Yeah, so I'm gonna probably precursor to what you want to talk about here a little bit. Circling back a little bit to ICM Conference 2 weeks ago now, or a week ago now, we sat in on a climatologist talking about a little bit of the weather. And one thing that's interesting that I think we have gotten to the point where we're getting enough data set and enough, hearing the message enough time that there is a big concern with our planting window in the spring. We're now, what we're seeing is still kind of maintaining average rainfall, but what we're having is a little more front loaded into the spring, a little bit backloaded into the late fall and the early winter time frame. So why is that concerning for us as agronomists and farmers is that our workable window now is down to 35 days. So they basically what they have gone through and then they have studied is that we have 35 days to put the crop in. And then we look at that in a window like we had this year, it's probably even less than that. And the other issue was that the 35 days came at 3 days here, 5 days here, 5 days here, 5 days there. And by the time we accumulate all that, it was 35 days over 3 months. So as we talk about long-term weather outlooks, I think that's an important fact that when we get a window, we need to be able to take advantage of that. We talked about last week with early planted corn. The difference could have been upwards of 20 to 25 bushels on what was planted in April and May. So the 35 days was what was pretty eye-opening to me. And the problem was with that too is that they've identified that's trending down. We're on a linear path downwards. The other one that was kind of a shocking, but not shocking when you think about it with a little bit of revisionist history, is that 40% of our annual precip in the state of Iowa occurred on the 10 wettest days. So what that means is that over a 10-day period, we had nearly half of our annual rainfall. And what they're calling that is, basically we're getting weather whiplash, is that we're going from drought to wet to drought, and we're doing it over, a period very, very quickly. So springtime, not good for trying to get the crop in, or not good for trying to get the crop up and out of the ground, dealing with saturated soils. So it's something that we just have to kind of plan for. And I guess when people ask, like, from our standpoint, how do we do that? Well, we try to get the best seed treatment on there to either you can maximize a window on the front end, maybe a little bit of cold tolerance, like we talk about with our corn and beans with turpidity, and then also give it enough nutrition that it can potentially, stay under. We can handle wet soils. Obviously, we can't handle super saturated soil, but we can handle wet soils. If we can get the beans in the ground, and get the corn in the ground, we can be wet. We can get an emergence. We'll be fine. Obviously, that's not good for the heat units, and when we're rainy like that and getting stuff out of the ground very quickly and very evenly. But we can handle that. So. Talked with Greg. He talked to the climatologist in Illinois, and basically they have computated the same thing in the state of Illinois as well, that they're going to have annual rainfall. The problems are just coming in these wide weather windows that are causing a lot of issues with getting stuff in the ground. And for us, we're talking above 3-inch rain events down there. And when you get east of St. Louis, they can have upwards of 5 to 8-inch rain events that we had to deal with. So as we look to that, planning for the future, equipment-wise, be ready to go. I mean, have everything done in the winter. From a variety and hybrid standpoint, treated seed is probably going to be very, very important to the portfolio mix from a, basically from an insurance standpoint, that you need to make sure that you have all the groceries ready to go, all the protections ready to go for an early planting window, or if you're a little bit later, having enough, nutrition and stuff around that seed to get it up out of the ground and get it thriving and taking off as fast as possible, making sure that there's no wasted energy in that plant. So, they go into a little bit about as far as, trying to explore some ways as we get into that drier periods with managing moisture. I think NRCS right now wants you to have, a 30% residue cover is their recommendation, whether that be the actual true residue from corn or if you're going to use some form of like cover crop. But definitely some management practices that we need to look forward to, potentially moving forward if we're going to have the new normal, I guess you would say. And then what's your outlook look like here for the next?
Yeah, so I had a handful of different stuff that came from Conduit Ag, which is Eric Snodgrass's new, basically it's Eric Snodgrass's weather platform that he has here. And basically in our 1 week change, we saw some improvement in drought in these light green areas. So, here in Southeast Iowa, we are definitely, we improved 1 class on the drought monitor. You can take a look at that. I have a 0 to 10 centimeter soil moisture percentile, and what I kind of wanted to do is compare the 0 to 10, the 0 to 40, and then the 0 to 100 centimeter soil moisture percentile, because this conversation has came up probably 4 or 5 times in the past 2 weeks that, we're muddy on top, we're slick on top, but none of the tile lines are running. And I would say that we have gotten a fair bit of moisture from the time that harvest stopped. You guys were kind of waiting to get into the anhydrous season, and we've gotten quite a bit of moisture from then. So in the last 60 days here in Southeast Iowa, we could put this map up as well, but we've received 8 inches of rain. There's like what you were talking about in east of St. Louis, they've up to like 12.6, and there's a band of rain in there that's not on the drought monitor anymore because of the rain that's happened in the last 60 days. But what I think about when I look at these soil moistures and what the subsoil looks like is basically, from a historical perspective, from now till March, you're not going to see any major changes. You might see stuff kick in the middle to second half of March where we start to get these larger rainfalls that are going to penetrate into the soil and make changes. But, if you're in a spot on this map where rainfall has been extremely excessive, and there's a 30-day that I don't have pulled up here on this total accumulated precipitation, think about what that's done to your nitrogen. If you're in an area that wasn't protected, or you put your nitrogen on when soil temps were floating in the 50s, and then they get up into the 60s and then back down into the 50s. Be thinking about nitrogen program and how to reinforce that entire system, whether that be a couple different passes on the planter, weed and feed, or side dress. But be thinking about protecting yourself that direction, because every pound of nitrogen that we have applied at this point or plan to apply is we're going to need it with the price of the commodities that we have right now. So definitely be thinking about those things. But as I'm looking at the difference in 0 to 10 centimeter soil moisture and the 0 to 100 centimeter soil moisture, there are areas in eastern Illinois that are extremely deficient. There are areas that stretch up through parts of Iowa that are very deficient, whether that be from a 0 to 10 or a 0 to 100. All of these things matter, because I don't think you're going to see a lot of change, especially if the ground freezes, which I think that we're going to look at another 2 weeks according to Snodgrass's maps of above average temperatures, which is good if we get any moisture in there. But as soon as Mother Nature pendulum swings, if we don't have any snow on the ground, this is where we're at, and this is where we're at when we're going to be moving into spring. So a couple of the things I wanted to look at there. I also have 2 more maps. We have
I think to hit the subsoil real quick.
Yep.
What that reminds me of, looking at Southeast Iowa, was going into spring, was that 2 years ago, when we were on, basically the drought monitor map very, very quickly into the growing season. But because we had some winter recharge, we were able to make it through that. If you're in these areas that are yellow or red, like you said, winter recharge is not probably going to happen. And it just ruins your opportunity to weather, no pun intended, any issues that you have with moisture on the front end of that. Because like I said, 2 years ago we had the best corn crop to date. Not very much rain,
Right.
but we had a decent recharge or a decent subsoil moisture. So as I look at that, I'm excited for us again to be to be at average, because we didn't really end the season great with. We had a great fall for getting harvest, but it was a terrible fall for doing that. That recharge in the soil, but post-harvest we've now made up for that. But yeah, as I look at your map, Western Iowa, which we've known Western Iowa's had some tough growing conditions over the last 5 years on average. One that's concerning, like I said, over in Illinois, that's a big area in the red that definitely need to keep an eye on that and make sure that the good Lord graces them with a little bit of moisture on that front to get the season started off right.
No, you're absolutely correct. And the old rule of thumb, or the old adage, when you talk about 2 years ago, for the areas that had tile lines still dripping or leaking, or at the start of the year, is we can almost make it to July. We can pretty much make it to July before we need any additional rainfall if we have a full soil moisture profile on average dirt that has some amount of water holding capacity. That doesn't work for sands, it doesn't work for really tough clays, but on the variable to more productive dirt, you can probably get to July without seeing a tremendous amount of stress in that crop. That's also temperature dependent as well. But so that's where we're at there. And I had 2 more maps talking about how Mother Nature gives us averages. We have a year-to-date total accumulated precipitation as a percent of normal. There's quite a bit of this map that looks completely different than what the 0 to 100 centimeter soil profile looks like, and even the 0 to 10 centimeter soil profile looks like, because there's a heck of a lot of light blues on here, indicating that we have had average rainfall or slightly above average rainfall, that 100 to 125%. There's not very many areas on this map that are showing deficits. So it's always interesting. It's always something to keep an eye on. And then I have a year-to-date departure from normal in actual inches, if you guys wanted to pause the video and take a look at some of those, because I always think this is interesting, and I think December going into January is a good time of year to, kind of get a look at what the year has brought to us and what potentially could come out of these different scenarios.
Exactly. I think it's a great opportunity, like you said, to maybe not make any decisions on nitrogen, but kind of in the back of your mind be ready to either go out and take a soil probe in the field come spring to see where you're at, or before you side dress, be able to quantify that amount and then make a reactionary decision based off that. Personal opinion, I think you should do it anyways, but your context clues leading up to it definitely help you make that decision, especially if you're someone who covers a little bit of acres, or if you're a dealer of ours that covers a pretty wide footprint. There's some variances there if you're on one side of the line or the other, depending on where that fell. It's going to be very important to make that into the management decision, and you hit it spot on right now. What we have out there, we need to make the most of. We probably aren't looking to sink more into a crop next year if it's not already in the budget to do so. Right.
So that gets us to the corny jokes, unless you guys have anything else you need to add. Okay, we'll start off with Lynn.
All right, so this is going to be the one week I really hope my wife doesn't watch Cup of Joe.
There you go.
Because this is a Christmas wife joke we got going on here. So I asked my wife what she wanted for Christmas. She told me that nothing would make her happier than a diamond necklace. So I bought her nothing.
There you go. I got one that a customer of ours from across the river that I've known forever growing up told me. It's been a couple weeks ago, but I thought it was pretty cute. There's this woman gets caught shoplifting in a grocery store, and they call the cops on her, and she had stolen 2 cans of peaches. And in the process of stealing a 2 cans of peaches, she had to go to trial to await her sentence. And in the process of, going, the judge feels bad for her because he asked her, he said, "Ma'am, why did you just steal the peaches?" She said, "Well, I was hungry and I'm broke." And he was feeling pretty soft that day, and, you know, felt bad for the lady because she didn't have any money. And he goes, you know, we got to do something because we can't just let you steal something and not have consequences. So how many peaches do you think were in the 2 cans of peaches that you stole? And she looked back at him and she's like, I don't know, probably 3 per container, so 6. The judge says, okay, 6. Well, we're going to give you 6 days in jail for the cans of peaches that you stole. And she's like, oh, a little down on herself. And her husband's sitting behind her in the chairs listening to the proceeding. And the husband stands up and waves his hand, and the honor calls on him and says, Honor, what you don't know is she stole 3 cans of peas too. Oh, that was funny.
So I don't want the opportunity to tell these every week, so this is going to be really bad.
Oh,
so,
okay.
What is it called when a snowman has a temper tantrum? A meltdown.
There you go. Well, we appreciate everybody tuning in this week. Hopefully everybody is prepped up and ready for Christmas, and we will catch you guys all at the end of next week.